Alright, so today I wanted to do a video. Rather than doing a commentary on anybody else's videos, I thought I would do a sort of response video to this website that has a lot of arguments and counter-arguments towards vegan ethics. So this is called Guide to Justifications for Harming and Exploiting Animals. And this person is going to try and defend them all. But I'm going to go through them, and I think I'll do maybe 10 at a time, maybe a little more if they seem to be going quick, and just give my thoughts on them. So we're going to start here, number one. It doesn't harm animals to kill them. The definition of harm is physical injury, especially that which is deliberately inflicted. Now, yeah, I did look into the dictionary. That is the definition of harm. So I'm not going to disagree with that. What I'm going to disagree with is that the people who say it doesn't harm animals to kill them are clearly using it in a different sense that you're not taking note of. When somebody says it doesn't harm animals to kill them, they're not just talking about the physical mechanics of it. They're talking more the phenomenological state of the animal, right? What it is to their consciousness. Is harm seen to them, or is it only seen to us externally through being able to witness their bodies, right? So obviously in that sense, when we see the body get bolt gunned, or slitting their throat, or all the stuff that needs to be done for the processing of animal, nobody's going to deny that those things don't happen in order to get meat, right? Who's making that argument? What somebody who is saying this is trying to say is that from the perspective of the animal, an instantaneous death is not a harm. Now, one can say that they mean this in an in-the-moment sense, but they can also mean that because an animal cannot conceptualize the future or have any of these sorts of plans, that their interests are also not being harmed. So that might make a distinct difference between killing someone who's asleep, a person, but they had plans to wake up and they had plans for their future, and killing an animal who does not have any of these things, whether awake or asleep. So I think that is the sense in which someone says it doesn't harm animals to kill them, right? And in that sense, somebody can make an argument to say that killing them isn't necessarily wrong. Then this one says, it doesn't harm animals to take their eggs. In the egg industry, only females are required because males don't lay eggs. As such, in the breeding process, the males and females are divided when they hatch, and the males are killed immediately as they serve no purpose. So we've already addressed that part in the top one. Subsequently, their sisters go on to be kept in captivity until their egg production is no longer profitable to the farmer, at which point they have their throats slit. So again, the throats slit is part of the the killing argument, which we've already addressed, right? We're going to say that's not necessarily wrong. So the question here is the captivity. Well, the captivity is absolutely not required to get eggs, right? I mean, you can have a chicken pen, but a chicken pen can have all the size that a chicken needs to roam around. Now, of course, you can make the counter argument that that's not the amount of space we're currently given chickens, but when we're just talking about a principled stance, we're not talking about all the pragmatic concerns that are going on right now, right? The question is, if they were given sufficient size, is it then okay? And we could argue that these considerations are the same as these considerations if they are given sufficient space, in which case we would argue it's not necessarily wrong. It doesn't harm animals to take their milk. In the dairy industry, only females are required because males don't produce milk. Like all mammals, cattle produce milk to feed their young once they give birth. It is a misconception that cows just produce milk non-stop. They do so only once impregnated. So that's true. I don't know, maybe there are some people who are under the impression that cows just generate milk for no reason. And I wouldn't be surprised if people thought that, because it's not really talked about, but when you think about human biology, it suddenly makes sense. As such, when a male is born, he will be slaughtered. Either he's culled immediately or he's sold into the veal industry and then killed a few weeks after of living in confinement, or he is sold into the beef industry and killed as soon as he reaches a profitable side, which will be about 1 year old. So most of these arguments are already covered in the counter-argument that I've provided here. The only difference might be living in confinement, which can be dealt for, right? We can take a stance against confinement without taking a stance against killing the animals. If the calf is female, typically she'll be removed from her mother so that the milk can be stolen, right? I don't know what they mean by stolen. And then she is used in the same manner, right? So is it stolen in the sense that this is a product she was planning on keeping for herself, right? Like, if I put my trash out and somebody takes my trash, well, let's assume that I don't have personal information in my trash. There is a pragmatic reason not to steal people's trash, right? But let's just say it's just things I don't want, and that's all that's contained in there, and I don't care if anybody has it. And if they take it, I wouldn't declare it stolen, right? Just as much as I would say that you stole my skin flakes that fell off me. You grabbed them off the floor and took them. So what? Once a mother's milk production is less profitable, she has her throat slit, right? And that's covered here. That generally happens after 2 milking cycles when she'd be around 6 years old. The average lifespan of a cow is 20 years, right? So we're not making an argument that cows should be given their maximum life cycle, right? It wouldn't be profitable, wouldn't make sense. But a cow doesn't know it's going to live till 20, right? That doesn't matter to a cow. It doesn't have plans for when it reaches 12 or when it reaches 14. It just plans to exist. So I'm not going to consider this wrong to kill them at an early age. Okay, so we've dealt with that one. I'm not going to deal with these links because they all have their own separate links. So we'll just do them in order so that we get them all. But cows need to be milked, right? Like all mammals, cows only produce milk to feed their young. In the dairy industry, the calf is taken away for the mother, and if male, killed. And as such, the mother will be producing milk in the absence of her child, will need to be milked. This is no justification for the process, of course. Like, I don't remember where we needed a justification for the process. If you were to kill a woman's baby boy while she was trying to breastfeed him, you could hardly claim you were doing her a favor by then stealing her milk because it needed to be done. The whole process doesn't need to be done. I agree the process doesn't need to be done, but that's different than saying it is wrong to do the process, right? Also, in order to get milk, one does not have to kill the child immediately. Like, this is just not a requirement. So we can say, in principle, there is a different way to do it, one that we could be satisfied with. Or we can just be satisfied with the way that we're going about it now, because I don't see anything that necessarily makes any of this wrong. It doesn't harm animals to take their wool. In the lamb mutton industry, the primary purpose of farming sheep is to kill them. They are killed when they reach a profitable size, which will vary from farm to farm, but like practically all farmed animals, is done very early into their lives since animals become fully grown at a very early time in their life. Again, this is the same killing argument. Killing needs to be proven as wrong in order to make this argument. And also, I don't know what they mean by the primary purpose of farming sheep is to kill them. Why can't the primary purpose be wool? And does it matter what the primary purpose is? I don't think it matters. The point is that both that happens, right? So if we had a lamb industry where the primary purpose, or any purpose, was to kill them, where we literally just took their wool and they lived otherwise, do you still have an argument against this? Right? Because that seems to be the idea of it doesn't harm animals to take their wool. So theoretically, you could have a place that only takes their wool. What would your argument be against that? And it seems like there is no counter-argument even being offered against that. I'll come to what I think their argument is because they make it with the honey argument. The wool is taken and sold, and then the animals are subsequently killed. Buying wool funds this practice, but it doesn't by necessity have to. Of course, there are many other issues, such as breeding animals into captivity for our own uses, so that has to be necessarily wrong. Um, I mean, when we make pets, when we breed animals, and then we give them good lives, are you against that too? Are you just against it because it's for our own use? Or does the way that the use affects the animal, um, a necessary component to saying whether something's right or wrong? And cruel treatment during the removal of fleece and so forth. Well, what cruel treatment of removing fleece is necessary to removing fleece, right? You can just shave them. You can go look on a video online and see a sheep being shaved and tell me if that looks cruel to you or not, right? I would argue it doesn't. Now, if you're against killing the sheep, then you could make an argument saying, let's make a sheep place where they just don't kill the sheep. You just get the wool, and that's it. That'll be slightly less profitable, but there's no reason that that's impossible. It doesn't mean that the entire industry would die. So, and what cruel treatment do they have to do in order to accomplish this? So these are the sorts of things I would want to see addressed by this point that is not addressed. It doesn't harm animals to take their silk. Silk is made from the cocoon of a silkworm. The silkworms wrap themselves in a single strand of silk, and they live inside the cocoon until they develop into a moth. In the silk industry, the farmers require a single long strand of silk. If the moths are left alone, they chew through the cocoon and escape. So the farmers kill all of them either by boiling them alive or by stabbing them with needles. The cocoons are then unraveled. So this is all the same thing, as you have to establish that killing animals is wrong. Otherwise, this just doesn't matter. All you're doing is describing the process, and you're telling us what we get from it, right? And a simple description isn't going to prove that it's wrong. It's like, yeah, okay, that's what we do. Well, moving on. It doesn't harm animals to take their honey. Honey is produced by bees, so it can be stored as a food source. On the most fundamental level, it is their property. Taking it is theft, right? So this is the argument that I thought he would use for this one, but he moves it over here. Why do you put conceptions of theft to bees, right? Is that what a bee thinks? Is that it's been robbed? I don't think bees really work on that level. I mean, you're establishing what we think of when we have property, and then we get property taken from it. That sort of way of conceptualizing objects is not the same thing when you're talking about bees, right? Bees are just gonna go about their business, no matter what you do. If you take all their honey, they just go out and make more. And they make way more than they ever need, right? That's why we take the honey, is because they just generate it at such large levels that they don't consume it. They just end up with giant nests of it. Um, we can't really, like, if I took something from you that you're not really using it, that would deny you the ability to sell it to someone, right? Make some sort of profit. If you've got some gym equipment, let's say, just clogging up your garage, right? Well, you might not be using it, but if I take it from you, you now can't generate a profit from it that you might have before. Is this the same with bees? Are bees going to barter this honey off that they have excess of? No. Right? So then what do they need excess of it? They don't have those sorts of conceptions that lead to ideas of theft that we do. But beyond this, there are a number of ethical issues. The standard practices for retrieving honey involve killing bees by incidentally crushing them. This is something I can't really comment on because I don't really know the process of retrieving honey. Bees are sprayed to subdue them while accessing the hive. Okay, that's fine. When honey is stolen, it is then replaced with a syrup alternative, which is not the same as honey and is essentially depriving the bee of their natural food. Now, are you saying that the substitute is problematic for the bees, or just that it's not natural, or it's just different than what they were collecting. Like, you need to say why that's a problem. Just the fact that it's different is not necessarily a problem. Beehives are extremely sensitive, and opening them up is highly unnatural for the bees. See, this is this unnatural word again, right? You're not saying it's problematic. You're not saying ways in which it harms the bees, or the ways bees are upset about it. You're just saying that it's unnatural. Well, what does that mean? It's just different than what would have happened if you didn't do it? Okay, then. Who work to keep a particular atmosphere inside, which gets disrupted. Okay, but then you just put it back, and is it still disrupted? Apparently they were sedated to begin with. Right, where was that? Subdue them while accessing the hive. So are the bees actually disrupted in a way that the bees care about? That's probably why they get subdued. On top of this, selective inbreeding of bees has weakened the species as a whole, and transportation of bees to places and environments they'd not normally travel to means transportation of diseases that would not normally affect the local population of bees, which is hazardous to bees in general, right? So, I mean, if this holds up, that could be a real problem because, you know, we have bee problems, and losing bees would be largely problematic. But that doesn't mean to say you have to transport bees to different environments, you know, or that you have to breed them in these inbred ways. Um, if your argument is that this is the only way you can do it, then you might be able to make a good argument for why we shouldn't farm honey, right? It's like, well, it's either we farm honey and destroy the bee population, or we don't farm honey, right? Then that sort of argument would be compelling, right? Because I don't think anybody wants to destroy the bee population. But if there is a way to do it without destroying the bee population, then this argument becomes very weak, right? We would just prefer that method. So then everything would be based off of your previous arguments, which I don't think were strong to begin with. It's a misconception that honey farming is of benefit to the overall bee population, right? But this could be a method of honey farming. This doesn't necessarily have to be all types of honey farming. If you can show that it is, then I'll side with you and I'll say that's a good argument. Otherwise, you're trying to use narrow examples to make broad statements. I just like the taste. Meat is often seen as just being a type of food, but it is a dead body. Well, it's both. It is both a dead body and a type of food of a once living creature, right? Well, that's how you get a dead body, yeah. To say, I just like the taste, is say, killing is justified if I like the flavor of the dead body. Absolutely false, right? When you give a reason for something, it does not mean you are giving a justification for something by necessity, right? I like playing basketball because basketball is fun, right? That doesn't mean I can do whatever I want that I find fun. It's the funness of it is just a description of why I play basketball. So if I think there is a reason that liking the flavor of, as he says here, if we follow this through, then someone would be justified in killing your pets if they like the taste, which surely nobody would agree with. Or even extend it to humans and say that if someone likes the taste of human flesh, then it's fine to murder people. Well, no, you can give separate reasons why you shouldn't be able to kill humans, or separate reasons why you wouldn't be able to kill pets. And those are generally in relation to the humans who own the pets. And say, liking taste isn't the justification, right? Just liking the taste is one of the motivating factors of why you would even bother to get meat to begin with. There tends to be both a motivating factor to everything we do, and most justifications for things we do is that there's nothing wrong with them, right? Why am I justified for taking a walk? Because there's nothing wrong with taking a walk. Why am I justified to play basketball? Because there's nothing wrong with playing basketball. and the whole it's fun for me, that's why I'm doing it, would not be a global justification saying that all things I find fun are right. Right? So why would you take it to be the case that if somebody says they like the taste, it has to be some sort of global justification which has to apply to everything? Doesn't really make sense. 9. It is my personal choice. It cannot be called a personal choice when it involves harming a third person for a trivial reason. Yes, it can be. Everything can be considered a personal choice. If somebody is a murderer who goes around killing people, it can be described as their personal choice. That doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Doesn't mean you have to agree with people's personal choices. But it's still a personal choice. Which is your desire to enjoy eating them / their secretions. Yeah, well, it's a personal choice when we don't find anything wrong with it. So, you know, killing animals for no reason is wrong. But if you have a reason, it's fine. Yeah, nobody's saying that. I'm not going to take the argument that killing animals for no reason is wrong. Well, I would say that killing animals for the sake of killing them is wrong, right? Just for the pleasure of killing things. I would describe that as a bad virtue. But here, we're not going to say killing animals for food is wrong. So I don't really see why I can't have that personal choice unless I believe it's wrong. Morality is subjective. You can't prove it's wrong for me. Even if you think morality is subjective, your ethics should still be backed by logic. So these are one of those statements that I know is going to be very misguided. Sure, your ethics should be backed by logic, but the logic is only entailed in how to get the things that you value into your life, right? If I value being skinny, then logically eating cake is not going to be the correct way to go about it. But by logic alone, you can't tell me that I have to value being skinny, right? If I don't, then eating a cake really isn't a problem. They are not random, nor are they plucked from thin air. In a sense, I would agree, but in a sense, not. See, now I would say ethics come, or the things that we value. The things that we value come from both our nature, which would be sort of a natural genetic sort of argument, where we have these sorts of base values really set in there to help us survive. That's how we came to develop them to begin with. And then they are associative to those sorts of things through our experience. So I wouldn't say the values we have are logically derived, right? Because I don't logically derive my genetics, and I don't logically derive the experiences that I have in my life. And if those are the components that make me who I am, then by logic I didn't create any of them. But still by logic I can decide how I would be able to accomplish such values. As such, the question is simple. Do you have any consideration for animals or not? Yes. Like, you don't have to have no consideration to not be a vegan. Most people would say that they care about animals, okay, or at the very least would not like to needlessly harm them, right? And here we go with the equivocation on harm again, right? So sure, people wouldn't want them to have a bad phenomenological experience. How does killing them do that? Obviously, people are not talking about physical, changes of their body when they say this statement. It doesn't harm animals to kill them. We're not just looking at it from a third-person perspective of us viewing the animal's body. We're talking about their experiences as they harm it. Farming animals for our consumption is needless. I'll agree that we don't have to. And so all harm visited upon them, including their slaughter, is needless also. Well, to slaughter them, that needs to be done, right? You're saying that you don't need to slaughter them. Sure, but we've also not established that it's wrong to do so, or that it harms them in any phenomenological sense. So your own subjective view should be to avoid harming them. if you have any consideration for them whatsoever. It's not true. There are definitely levels of consideration. I apply a different level of consideration to people in my life, to pets that I have, and to farm animals, and to insects invading my house, right? It's not all this one metric of how much harm is occurring. There are multiple metrics upon which we judge things. So I think whoever wrote this has made it overly simplistic, right? This is not informative of how we should look at things, because nobody looks at things from any sort of simple metrics like this whatsoever. And we're not even agreeing to the sort of phenomenological harm that you're describing. You know, you're using a very physical description, a very third person perspective, your perspective looking at the animal. You're not using the animal's perspective in order to make this statement. So I find these very weak statements. Okay, so that's the first 10. We'll leave it there. I'll upload that. Tell me if you guys are interested, and I'll do the next 10. And we'll keep going from there. Alright, I'll see you guys later.